Happy to be with you and welcome back. And
Thank
you
you,
heard the
sir.
big news this morning.
What's that?
Donald Trump is going to announce they're changing the name of the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Gulf. That was announced moments ago. And as you may know, Donald Trump is on his way next week to Saudi Arabia. So
Yeah. Well,
can't make this stuff up.
You know, when it comes to that, just because you started there, it is more than a little bit on display, the utter corruption associated with the deals made with Abu Dhabi, with the influx of money. It's 1.2 billion, I think it was, and maybe even north of that number, that was crypto purchased by the UAE, and it was purchased on the platform that the Trump family owns. So it's like a Coinbase type thing. Think of it like Charles Schwab. That's where you trade stocks, where you trade crypto on this platform that's like that. I think it's called Liberty.
We've never had such corruption. I mean, it's just
and it's an extraordinary thing.
It makes Sherman Adams and the Eisenhower administration, who left because of a vicuna coat, it pales in comparison.
Yeah, I mean, it really is redefining a kind of open corruption. Even in the first Trump administration, there was a patina of the, shall we say, distancing himself from the family business. The family's business, I don't have anything to do with it. Yeah. Now there's none of that. And we knew in Trump 1, season 1, he had the hotel, he had the resorts. Those were all ways in which he could money himself. He did it through the Secret Service. He continues to do that. But
and don't forget the new clubs that are being opened, particularly in Washington, where you can, for $500,000, join their exclusive club and have access to everything you want. I mean,
it's $500,000, right, to join. John is exactly right. It's called the Executive Club, and it's run by Donald Trump's son. So the self-dealing and self-enrichment in this administration is on display on a level really unprecedented. I know we have a recency bias, but it really is unprecedented.
I want you to know, Mark, the reason I volunteered to serve on the Mark Thompson program, which I heartily endorse, is because of all the perks I get. I want you to know.
We need to send him some perks. I don't know, but the and the gold card.
I won't be bribed. I won't be bribed.
You won't
Honest John Rothmann.
Shadow producer Calvin Wong says gold card for citizenship too. Yeah, I mean there is that whole selling citizenship, and citizenship in this country, and for those who have a lot of money, has always been more accessible than for those who don't have as much money. But now we're in a weird situation with American citizenship for sale.
It's corrupt. Your word was corrupt. It is the most corrupt administration in American history. And it will be so recorded in my judgment.
So take me to, I'm going to hit you with a couple of polls here in a second that I think reflect the fact that the mood in America has turned on Trump a bit. But before we get too, jacked up on that, I see a lot in right-wing media, and I've even come from a red state recently in the last week, and you see the ecosphere that they operate in is very different. And they are still rah Trump. So those things that enrage us, center left, if you will, they don't enrage the rest of the country. Give me a state of the state as you see it now in terms of priorities and those things that I think economics is going to leapfrog everything here in about 3 weeks to a month. But I'm curious as to your impressions.
Well, first of all, with deep regret, I hate to tell you that the old signal 810 AM, which was KGO and is now KSFO, if you want to hear an example of the defense of Donald Trump every minute of the day, that's what you listen to. And for somebody like me who suffers from low blood pressure, it works miracles. But it is astounding. There are just no words to describe the feeling that I have. You asked about the economic situation. Just take a look at the Port of Los Angeles. You are in Los Angeles. Take a look, Mark, at what is happening in the Port of Los Angeles. It is an unmitigated disaster, and yet Donald Trump seems determined to carry on.
Well, deliveries are down by a third, just to put a specific on it. Yeah.
Right. And so, what can you say? The ultimate decision will be made by the American people, and I can't wait for the midterm elections, because if I believe in the American people, and I know you and I have differed on this, but I do believe in the good judgment of the American people, I expect the Republicans to be clobbered in November.
Well, I think they are taking on political water. I don't have much faith in the good judgment of the American people, because the good judgment of the American people, as you put it, gave you Donald Trump to begin with, and they gave you Donald Trump a second
half
time.
The people.
Okay, well, that was sufficient in numbers. So,
well, I'm hoping that the other half will strike back at the polls. And can I make a quick comment then as well about the question of the courts? It is clear that everything comes down to two justices of the United States Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett and the Chief Justice, John Roberts. In those two individuals' hands will determine whether or not, by a 5-4 vote, the Trump administration is stopped. All the lower courts are siding against Donald Trump at this point. And one can only hope the Supreme Court will come through, as I hope they will.
Yeah, there's a lot of hope being hung on this court that you would have recoiled from, I think, in the past. I don't mean just you literally, but I mean one would have. This is a court that's stacked with conservative judges. They made their first order of business rolling back Roe, and yet now we sort of have to look at them as daddy, daddy, rescue me. I don't know. I mean, you've got a highly politicized court. It is true that Trump has so gone after the legal system and the courts that it's quite possible that the justices on the Supreme Court will break back against him. It does appear like there's some of that happening already. So maybe that's well-placed hope.
And then the question is whether Donald Trump will defy the court. And I think that is really going to be, when you talk about a real constitutional crisis, that would be a real, genuine crisis. Although some who are listening at this moment may disagree with me, I believe we're in a constitutional crisis now.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that phrase a lot. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I go a step further. I think you have essentially almost a completed coup. And that doesn't mean it's irreversible, but it does mean that you have a president and his functionaries that are operating completely independent of any kind of general institutional guardrails, Congress, the judiciary, and the rule of law. And one of the things that has brought people, investors, businesses, and students, the world to America is our respect for the rule of law. There is an equality that no one's above the law. That is something that you and I know that if you've got money, you've got a better chance at working the legal system than if you don't have money. But the general notion of working within the legal system has always been underpinning the U.S., hasn't it?
Absolutely, 100%. You go back and you take a look. I just finished rereading John Sirica's book, for the record. And John Sirica...
Remind everybody who John Sirica was, please.
Yeah, he was the judge in the key component in the Watergate cases. And he has a whole section in his book about the question of executive power. And if anything, what this court must do is to uphold the Burger Court's judgment that there are limits to a president's power. We have yet to see that happen, but I find it extremely distressing. And may I tell you, I am a big fan of the Constitution. And when the President of the United States stated on Meet the Press that he would ignore the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, due process, that is a violation of the 35-word oath. Do you remember the words? I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. That is clearly not what Donald Trump said on Meet the Press. And I don't know if Albert has the clip, but it is one of the most, and I hate to ask for such things.
You shouldn't. I warned you about,
what?
I warned him against asking for clips, Albert, and still he asks for clips. The guy can't help himself.
Albert, here's his ding word for you. I am incorrigible.
Yes. All right. I wanted to ask you about, just related to the rule of law, I wanted to ask you about sanctuary cities and going after mayors, governors of states, etc., who don't play ball with ICE and who defy these orders when it comes to rounding up illegal immigrants, people who are undocumented in this country and are in sanctuary cities and states that protect them.
Yeah, look, we have states, we have cities that are sanctuary cities. Donald Trump has threatened to cut them off. I can tell you that there is blowback on it and pushback on it, but that's what Donald Trump has instructed Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, to do, and that is what she is pledged to do.
He is
It's
within,
shocking.
so with Pam Bondi as the top of justice in America, he is within his rights. Trump is to withhold these funds, these federal funds. To
I
these
don't
cities.
think he's within his rights. I think, in fact, he's withholding funds, and that's what many of the court cases. You might want to go through a list of the court cases which Donald Trump faces, some 200 of them. I really believe that it is unconstitutional for a president to rule by executive order or to make these kinds of decisions. Look what he's done in terms of budgets. Do you know that not only is FEMA a critical part of our structure in terms of disaster, but Donald Trump is cutting FEMA. Donald Trump is I mean, you name the department. He calls it government economy. I'm convinced there will be blowback. There will be moments when things cannot be covered. And let me make one other quick comment about Social Security. Have you tried to call a Social Security office lately? You can't do it. And have you tried to make an appointment to go in and visit at the Social Security office? The cuts they've made in Social Security doesn't abolish the program, doesn't prevent the checks from going out each month, but it obstructs the ability of the American people to access what is going on in Social Security and how they may or may not benefit. The absurdity, and may I add the word obscenity, to what Donald Trump is doing is just astounding. One other example, NOAA, the weather control system that we have
National
in the
Oceanic
United States,
Administration.
just wait until there's a real weather disaster. They are not equipped to handle that, and we all understand that. And I don't want to get off on everything, but look what's happening.
Just because it dovetails with that, I would say that what they're doing with the Forest Service and national parks. In the national parks, they are taking away the monitoring systems associated with air quality, and that's critical in terms of building a network of data about what's happening in the national parks and what's
for
happening with air
ecological
quality
balance.
everywhere. Yeah,
it's nuts. And so when you talk,
these are not expensive programs, by the way. Certainly, I mean, FEMA costs some money, but the others do not.
And it should. That's the job of the federal government. What is the job of the government? It is to protect the people who need the most help, who are the most vulnerable. And did you hear again?
By the way, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're so right about this. What John just said. Even those who would fall into maybe, and I know this is like a cool thing to say you're a libertarian these days. I don't think people even really realize, many of them who say that, what that means. But even if you consider yourself sort of in that libertarian camp, the one thing government is for, or one of the things, I mean, prosecuting a war, or defending military, this kind of thing. But as John says, when there's a national disaster, a catastrophe of some kind, it's too big to be handled by individuals who, put together some group of communities to handle it. That's what the federal government is there for. That's why the creation of FEMA was so critical and has done so much for so many states that have been affected.
And I also point out that there are mass resignations in the Civil Rights Division at the Justice Department. And if you really want to understand individual liberty and the effectiveness, well, that's it. It's right there. And so when I look at all the things being rolled back by Donald Trump, being, eliminated by Donald Trump, one can only hope that the courts will react. But now I want to be very clear. The people opposing Trump are winning in the lower courts. They're even convincing judges nominated, put on the court by Donald Trump. But it will all boil down to the Supreme Court of the United States. And when you know that Alito and Thomas are solidly in the Trump area, and you have 3 liberal justices of the court who vote routinely against him, what you are going to have is 2 justices, Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice John Roberts, who may determine the future. And then comes something even more interesting to me. The fact that J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, and Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, and the Solicitor General of the United States, are all talking about refusing to obey the court. And one of the things that I learned during the Watergate period, which I know is ancient history for a lot of people, is even Richard Nixon was unwilling to defy the courts. And the reason he fell in the end, if he had simply said, I'm not going to give you the tapes, up yours, why, he would have remained president or been impeached and removed from office. But did you know that we had a vote in the United States Senate, a tie vote? J.D. Vance broke the tie on the question of tariffs. Now, all you have to do is understand how tariffs work to understand that a tariff has to be imposed by Congress. It can't be imposed, it shouldn't be able to be imposed unilaterally by the head of the executive branch. Well, can you believe the United States Senate, on a vote of 49 to 49, abdicated its responsibility in this regard? May I tell you?
And the reason, but the reason that he's able to, just because you brought this up, the reason he's able to do it is he declared what?
He declared a state of national emergency.
Right.
And let me assure you, there is no national emergency. That's the other thing.
It's so weakly concocted. Exactly.
Of course. I mean, this becomes, to me, it's adulteration of what the American political system is. And I hope that I'm right. I hope that in the end the Supreme Court acts. But if they don't, this has been a dramatically different United States of America, a dramatically different interpretation of the Constitution. And we haven't even gotten yet to the 14th Amendment, where I want to remind you that Donald Trump is now saying that he wants the idea of birthright citizenship eliminated. And I can only tell you, all you have to do is read the words. If you are, in the words of some conservatives, a strict constructionist or a literalist, the meaning is clear. And one other quick observation. I know we talked during the campaign about Project 2025. Everything that Project 2025 has asked for, they have gotten. And Donald Trump denying that he had even read the report was ludicrous during the campaign. But just take a look. I mean, there are charts.
Well, I believe that he didn't read I believe that he didn't read Project 2025.
No,
I don't think
disagree.
I don't think he's read the outside of an envelope. I mean, I don't think the guy reads it all.
No, you can't. But you see,
I think he's aware of it. I think he's okay with it. He's in bed with them, and he's turned over the keys to the administration, essentially, to Project 2025 agenda-related items. But I don't believe that he read 900 pages of Project 2025. I don't believe he read 9 pages of it.
I think the point is that he is following an agenda. And how do I know
That's right.
We learned many years ago that what you do is you judge a candidate for president by their advisors, by the people around them. And that's what we have done in every administration, which isn't always accurate, but it's pretty precise. And all the key figures in Project 2025 now have critical roles in the Trump administration. And that, to me, is absolutely unbelievable.
Well, one of the great authors of Project 2025 is Russ Vought, who runs OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, which is incredibly powerful. I wanted to share this.
You're right. OMB is one of the most powerful positions in government.
Yeah, people don't realize it because it's sort of like this, less shimmering kind of institution, but it's extremely, all the funding for the U.S. goes through OMB. This is interesting from a polling standpoint, and I know polls are something that people both recoil from and also embrace. I'd suggest it's important to look at polling, particularly if it's done well, from respected pollsters. And also, I'd say voting is a kind of polling. So, before everybody craps all over polls, let me just share this with you. And this is from G. Elliott Morris, who is a statistician who does a Substack called Strength in Numbers that I read. In the 2024 election, Donald Trump gained a surprising edge from an unlikely group, Americans who typically don't vote. According to a New York Times analysis, these low turnout voters backed Trump by a double-digit margin, flipping the script from prior years when non-voters leaned Democratic. This wasn't just a quirk of the horse race polls. Campaign operatives, analysts, post-election surveys all pointed to the same conclusion. The less you followed politics, the more likely you were to vote for Trump. Now that he's president, something shifted. New polling shows that the very voters who powered Trump's return to office are now abandoning him, John. And if that trend holds, it could upend assumptions about how much campaign messaging and elite discourse really matter, because it turns out the people who don't read the New York Times, don't watch the Sunday shows, and don't care about the policy details still care when the economy sours and their lives get harder.
You're absolutely right. 100%.
And the latest polling shows that those people who showed up for Trump are not supportive of his economic agenda. These are the cracks in the armor that is the Trump movement that brought him to power for a second term.
Yeah, but you understand, Donald Trump doesn't care. He can't run for re-election. This is it. And he, by the way, finally came to the conclusion he can't run for a third term. Thank God. It wouldn't have made any difference if he'd wanted to. He couldn't. But the point is, he feels himself to be above the law. And I want to be crystal clear. I was only 2 years old when the 21st Amendment, when the 22nd Amendment, rather, was passed on two-term limit. I've always opposed term limits, and this is exactly the reason why I oppose term limits, because what you now have is a president who doesn't give a damn and whose power is unchecked. And this, to me, is
well, what I
something
would
else
say, John, is that the political damage spills over to those people who legislatively have to face their constituency,
You're
right?
absolutely right.
The Congress has to, and so the more toxic, and I'm not saying he's toxic yet, although, you know,
I think he's toxic.
Yeah, I think it depends who you talk to, but that toxicity does begin to bleed out onto much of Congress.
Sure, and that's going to affect whether the Republicans can control the House and Senate. But less people don't realize this. Even if the Democrats take control of the House and Senate, their power will be limited because they won't have large majorities. This is not going to be like the landslide of 64 or the landslide of, well, you can choose your year. It's a very interesting thing. So in terms of opposition to Donald Trump, we really have to rely on the courts. And this vote in the Senate, which I referred to just a few minutes ago, 49-49 with J.D. Vance breaking the tie, demonstrates the unwillingness of Republicans at this point in time, to cross Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to take the temperature of the water at different points in this administration. We're only a little over 100 days in, and the one thing I would really underscore is that the effects of these tariffs we have not felt yet. What you're feeling through the economy is anxiety about the tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
The tariff effect everyone is roughly aware of. But in fact, Trump commenting on, it's going to be a leaner Christmas and all
and
this
don't
kind
forget
of thing.
those dolls.
Right.
Don't forget those dolls.
Dolls, pencils, etc. But the effects of his tariff policy, that will be felt in about a month. Certainly within 90 days, there will be dramatic effects.
Sure. And one of the things you talked about, the Canadian Prime Minister, and I found it fascinating to listen to Carney in the context of that discussion, when he made a statement clearly and precisely that Canadians can't be bought. And I think this is something that we need to understand. And Donald Trump, I hope, is getting a real lesson in that. I hope.
Well, he is used to everything being transactional.
Can I say one other
essentially,
word?
Carney said, hey, we're not a condo building, okay? You can't buy us. And yeah, I thought he made it graciously, but he made the point firmly. Go ahead.
Firmly. I want to say something about foreign policy just for a moment, because I know we're running out of time. I resent the fact that I don't have more time on your program. But I wanted to be clear about what is happening now between India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers who now confront each other with constant escalation. The Indian subcontinent, were it hit with a nuclear conflagration, the implications, by the way, conflagration is a ding word.
That's true. Thank you. I love it. A self-identified ding word. Go ahead. Yes.
That would be a catastrophe, not just for the people of India and Pakistan, but I want to remind you that it would also be a disaster environmentally, although it's clear Donald Trump doesn't give a tinker's damn about the environment. So I'm pointing this out. I used to kid people when I give talks. In fact, I'm giving a talk this afternoon, and I'll use this line. So those who are listening, I apologize. Cashmere is more than a sweater.
Yeah. Okay. I'd lose that line from your speech if I were you. Hey, but it is one of the cornerstones of Rothmann is he likes those plays on words. Can you, without getting too deep into it, explain? I mean, this is a tense relationship between Pakistan and India, and always has been, right? Disputed territory, and neither really wants to see it escalate to the kind of nuclear confrontation that you referred to.
I agree. That's how Nixon in 1971 was able to master that confrontation. That's the last time there was a major blowup. And if you read Nixon's memoirs, he describes it very clearly. But we don't know the leadership of Pakistan today. We don't really understand their fanaticism and how they could react. This is a very serious moment, and I'm amused by the fact that it is not getting the headlines that it ought to be receiving. Because when you have two nuclear powers facing off against each other with no real restraints, potentially you have a real issue. So when you stop and think about it, Nixon once said to me, he said, John, 70% of a president's time is devoted to foreign policy. And one of the things where Donald Trump deserves a grade, and I think it's a failing grade, is on foreign policy, whether it's Canada or Greenland, or whether it's the Panama Canal, or whether it is what's happening now. So I'm throwing these things out just for people to think about. And it's true that Trump uses a scattergun approach. Oh, I forgot Alcatraz, because of course I here in San Francisco, and Alcatraz is right out the window, and we understand it. I've been to Alcatraz, believe me, on numerous occasions, not as a convict or a criminal, but I can tell you that I've interviewed people who were in prison at Alcatraz. I've interviewed people who were prison guards. The idea of bringing back Alcatraz is the most ludicrous, ridiculous. And did you understand what happened? This is stunning to me. What did the National Park Service say? Oh, if the president orders it, we're willing to do everything we can to implement what the president says. I don't want a government which responds to a president in that fashion.
Well, that is absolutely the government you've got, whether you want it or not. And you're right. And this is the point I made the other day when he made this absurd notion come to life after having seen Alcatraz, the movie, to which he referred. He didn't refer to the movie, but he referred to, no one's ever escaped from Alcatraz. I don't do a Trump impression. I wish I did. But he said, one guy they haven't been able to find. They found his tattered clothing with shark bites.
Rubbish.
That was from the movie. That's in the movie. He's clearly seen the movie. So all I'm trying to say is he has these bizarre notions, but then what you just described is the thing that I think applies not to just this Alcatraz thing, but it applies to everything. And you could even find it in Trump 1, his first administration. It's everybody scrambles to actually get an action plan for whatever bizarre utterance he's come up with. So in this case, it's Alcatraz and reconstituting it and reopening it. In Trump 1, it was that ridiculousness about 2 million people voted in the election in, I think, was it Vermont or Maine or whatever, from they were illegal immigrants, and they voted illegally.
California. He said there were 3 million illegal immigrants in California, and he appointed a commission to be chaired by Mike Pence. And of course, it met once, and that was it. A quick word about Mike Pence. I am not a fan of Mike Pence. I have to tell you, I listened to his interview on CNN the other night, which I thought was catastrophic on many levels, policy-wise. But he deserved the Profiles in Courage Award from the John F. Kennedy Library. And some of you will recall that in the aftermath of January 6th, I suggested 2 names for the Profile in Courage Award. One was Liz Cheney, and the other was Mike Pence. And I have to tell you, in that regard, everybody meets a moment. Mike Pence met his moment and will go down in history as someone who had the courage to stand up and say it. And although he's mild in his criticism of Trump today, he was very clear about what happened on January 6th. And if you read his autobiography, So Help Me God, he makes it very clear. And that's because Mike Pence, whatever you think of him, respected the Constitution and his oath of office. I wish I could say the same for Donald Trump.
As we finish up, because we're over time, I wanted to get a quick sense of what's happening with the Georgia senatorial race. Brian Kemp, who is the governor.
He's not running.
He's decided not to run. That's exactly right. So you've got John Ossoff, and he may be up against Marjorie Taylor Greene for that Senate
I hope
seat.
that happens, because I am convinced Ossoff would be reelected.
And so that is something that Republicans look at quite anxiously, because the reality is that that Kemp might have had a chance, but it's likely that Green does not. I mean, she's just such
I
a
believe
mess.
that to be the case. And Ossoff has been a pretty good senator, to be very honest with you. So we just have to see how these things go.
But just remind us why that's important, because of the
control of the Senate.
Yeah, control of the Senate. Exactly. It's a numbers
and I
game.
regret that you and I, well, maybe we can, through your good offices on election night, of course, that's more than a year away, sit down and really analyze returns. We've had that pleasure before, and I hope we have it again.
That'd be great. John's podcast is the word I'm looking for. Yes, is available every day. It's called Around the Political World with John Rothmann, and find him also on The Voice of San Francisco.
Under podcasts.
TheVoiceSF.org. Look for it under podcast. John, love you, see you, be you, always be you, John. Always be you. That's the word I have for you today. Thank you, John.
And I'll see you next week. And keep up the good work. And he may not mention contributions, but I am.
All right. See you, John.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.